Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh live inside the Beltway in the Relief Factor studio. I am here on Christmas Eve. I love Christmas Eve shows. It's always been my tradition to do a lighthearted show and to have fun with the audience that is going to be going crazy throughout the day, because it is the craziest day of the year for any family with small children, because the kids wake up on a pogo stick and they don't get quieter throughout the day. They get spun up. Now you might have to go to a Christmas pageant. I have no Christmas pageant on my bingo card this year. We do have a wonderful church service at 8 p.m. tonight. We don't do midnight mass in our mixed marriage, evangelical Roman Catholic Presbyterian marriage. We do 8 p.m. service tonight. But we don't have a Christmas pageant, so I got that going for me. But I do nevertheless have to spend a Christmas Eve show on the awful thing that somebody did at the White House yesterday in Joe Biden's name. I'm going to get to that, to the commutations. And I'm not blaming Joe Biden. I don't think he's actually mentally competent. And that's my opinion based upon all the observation and the reporting. He really ought not to be signing anything except his resignation. Kamala Harris should be the President of the United States, because we really don't know who is. And Edith Wilson land. I'll come back to that. I want to start, though, by reminding you that the land of Christ's birth has been in a war for 15 months. And that war continued yesterday in Gaza, and 3 IDF soldiers were killed yesterday in the Gaza Strip. Captain Ilya Gabriel Atedgi, who is 22 years old, captain at 22. Wow. Staff Sergeant Nathaniel Pesich, 21, from Elazar, and Sergeant First Class Hillel Diener, he's a reservist from Talman. They were all in the Kafir Brigade's Shimshon Battalion. They were all killed as the Hamas terrorists tried to regroup in northern Gaza. The mother of the dead corporal, the dead Staff Sergeant Nathaniel Pesich, the 21-year-old, his mother, who is Rivital, asked yesterday, I really asked that if each of the people of Israel is willing to stop for a moment and close their eyes and see if there's anyone they hold a grudge against or disagree with, simply call them and tell them, in memory of the hero of Israel, Nathaniel Pesich, I am willing to move one step, take off one piece of clothing, meet with you, and give you a hug. I passed that on. Aviv Reddick Gore posted that because it's a wonderful sentiment. It's a grieving mother, and she is asking her grief to redeem other people's dysfunction in their family or among their friends, or as a result. I mean, Israel's politics are as bitter and as broken as our politics are, and there you have the mother of a slain soldier giving out a true Christmas thought. Gaza, by the way, almost certainly had to have been the area through which the infant Jesus, his mother Mary and Joseph, his stepfather, took him in the flight from Herod after the wise men did not return to tell Herod of where they had found the child in Bethlehem. So Herod figured out he was snookered, and he would go on to murder all the innocents in Bethlehem. And the church remembers their martyrdom in the new year. But the Feast of the Holy Innocents is what it's called. But in Gaza, the war goes on this Christmas Eve. There is no truce. And I thought I would begin that way. Now I want to go to, I am increasingly upset. Not decreasingly. Normally I get decreasingly upset. Increasingly upset with whoever decided that we would commute death sentences for 37 people. And the stories are beginning to come in from the ABC News. Victims and family react as Biden spares the life of 37 federal death row inmates. And they're not reacting well because they were not consulted. They were not spoken with. And the people who are saying this was a great thing are not the people who lost a loved one at a terrible killer's hands. Biden death sentence commutation reprehensible, says Virginia victim's father. So local Virginia news last night reported on one of the victim's fathers. Biden commutes death sentence for Philadelphia drug lord who killed 12 people, including children. So these stories are just starting to show up. This was on Channel 6 up in Philadelphia. President Joe Biden on Monday announced, he didn't announce anything. We didn't see him. We got a piece of paper. That he's commuting sentences of 37 of 40 people on death row, including a Philadelphia drug lord who is convicted of killing a dozen people. All right, a dozen people. Family members of the children who died. Remember, this guy ordered a firebombing of a house that killed a young child. Family members of the children who died are devastated. This includes Tina Fox, who told Action News she's disappointed in the president. Many of Fox's relatives were murdered at Savage's direction at a home on North 6th Street in 2004. The crime is beyond violent. They were children, she said. They would have been adults now, but they didn't have a say. You can't hear their voice. They were killed. And this is what people are saying across the board. I got a chance. I got blessed. I got to be on Special Report last night, and Brett came to me first to talk about this, and I got to say it. Cut number 5.
Okay, Hugh, thoughts?
It was an outrageous and an incoherent abuse of presidential power, Brett. The victims' families will be heard from, I hope, in the coming days. But there is no coherent distinguishing between the 37 murderers, and they were very awful crimes, and the 3 that President Biden left on death row. Now, I doubt the president is competent. I really do not believe he's in a position to sign anything except his own resignation. But if he is going to defend what this outrageous act is, he ought to come out and take questions on it. There are Department of Justice regulations that allow for victims to be heard. They were not followed. It's an abuse of power, and the collapse of his reputation continues apace. And it just is, they don't care. I don't know who is driving this bus, the Politburo around Joe Biden. We know Dr. Jill Biden is part of it, but I think Dr. Jill Biden came up with let's commute 37 out of 40 people. It's so stupid. I mean, if you want to come out and say, okay, I said I was against the death penalty, it's hard for him to do, because this is Joe Biden in 1994, cut number 7.
I'm a death penalty supporter. I'm the guy that wrote this bill. Presumptuous thing to say, but I wrote this bill. My own little hands. And I added into the bill more than 50 death penalties. I support the death penalty. This president supports the death penalty.
That was 1994, so it's 30 years ago. But, of course, people change their minds. It's okay to change your mind. He ought to come out and explain that, but he can't because he's not competent. You know it, and I know it. He physically can't do it. So he ought not to be wielding the pardon power. Brett came back around to me, and we're talking Panama Canal and President Trump negotiating posting again. Cut number 6.
Hugh, your thoughts about this? Obviously, he's doing a number of things, saying a number of things. Greenland, Panama Canal.
He's serving notice that he's back, Brett, and he does do a lot of this sort of machine gunning out of different issues. But the problem with the canal, of course, is the Chinese Communist Party owns a company that is running some ends of the canal. I think the president is negotiating via post again, which he is known to have done in term 1. I do want to go back to something that was said about the commutation. I don't think we'll see Joe Biden out there. If he comes out, I'll take it all back. But I don't think he is competent to be doing anything right now, and they are torching his legacy, Brett. So Donald Trump's kind of helping Joe Biden by giving people something else to talk about. But Joe Biden, I think Robert Hur called him an elderly man with a poor memory. That's going to end up being the best thing that's said about him at the close of 2024, given how bad this White House is cratering. I just want to pause on this. The White House does not care because they don't care about Joe Biden. It's been elder abuse for a long time. But they don't care about what history is going to record. He's ambling around the White House being bodied, to use the term of art, by a coterie of aides who won't let him near a microphone because he can't talk. So we have a constitutional crisis. We have a 25th Amendment to deal with things like this. And the victims' families, I'm going to read you a piece by Andy McCarthy when I come back. The victims' families, according to the Department of Justice regulations, had a right to be heard by the pardon attorney or someone before a commutation was issued. None of that happened. Some Prague kid decided this was a good idea. And then some Prague kid said, well, we can't pardon the Boston Marathon bomber or the killer at Mother Emanuel or the killer at Tree of Life. I got it. That's the ticket. We'll say those are hate crimes. Well, when you get into the details of the other 37, they're hate crimes too. It's simply not coherent. He ought not to be president. You know it, and I know it. And he ought to get out of the job, and they ought to stop embarrassing him by doing things he could not do if he were allowed to try and do them on his own. Stay tuned on Hugh.